She was invisible, a ghost in a cheap uniform, serving champagne to people who would never remember her face. But 3 months ago, she was one of them. 3 months ago, she had a career, a fiancé, and a best friend she trusted with her life. Then they took everything: her research, her reputation, her future. Her fiancé didn't just leave her, he stole 2 years of her work and handed it to the company as his own. And her best friend, the woman she asked to be her maid of honor, she was the one sleeping in her bed. Now Natalia is serving drinks at their engagement party, watching them celebrate a life built on her stolen dreams. She thought she had hit rock bottom. She thought no one would ever see her again. But someone did. A man standing alone in the shadows. A man whose name made powerful men go silent. A man who smelled like sandalwood and danger. He was the most feared figure in that room, and he was Sophia's father. What happens next will shatter every plan Marcus and Sophia ever made. Because in Dante Castellano's world, betrayal is the one sin that never goes unpunished. The sound of champagne glasses felt like a final sentence being passed down. I was an outcast in the corner of the grand rosewood ballroom. My uniform, made of cheap, rough material, scraped against my neck. I watched the enormous crystal fixtures throw broken light over marble floors I would never be rich enough to cross as a guest. The air was thick with the scent of expensive flowers and generational wealth. The kind of money that buys you a family name and a summer estate. To them, I was invisible. I was just another server holding a tray of appetizers. My face would be forgotten the second I refilled a glass. My hands shook as I shaped smoked salmon into a flawless rose. Just 3 months ago, I would have been at this very event, holding on to Marcus's arm. I would have been wearing the sapphire gown he promised me. 3 months ago, my world still had fairy tales. A sharp, privileged voice I knew all too well cut through the music, demanding more champagne. My stomach clenched into a hard knot. It was Sophia, my closest friend from my college days, the woman I had asked to be my maid of honor. She was the one who had wept on my shoulder, telling me how lonely she was, the one I had told every secret, every worry, every hope to. There she was, standing only 20 feet from me, draped in a designer gown the color of blood. Her arm was coiled possessively around the waist of Marcus, my Marcus, but he was not mine any longer. He leaned in and whispered in her ear, loud enough for everyone nearby to overhear, telling her how stunning she looked. Those were the exact words he had spoken to me 6 months before, when he asked me to marry him on a rainy bridge in Central Park. I quickly turned my back, my eyes filling with tears. The tray in my hands began to tremble. A champagne glass slid dangerously toward the floor. A deep voice, smooth like fine whiskey, spoke from right behind me. "Be careful." I willed myself to be still without looking at him. "I am fine. You do not look fine." That voice drew nearer. I could smell his cologne now, a mix of sandalwood and something more primal, more threatening. Was it tobacco? No. It was gunpowder. The idea was completely irrational, but it stayed with me. When I finally turned, any words I had were gone. He was standing too close, breaking the unspoken rule of distance between staff and guests. He was tall, easily over 6 feet, with dark hair brushed back from a face that looked like it belonged in a classic Italian masterpiece. He had a strong jawline, a noble nose, and eyes so dark they appeared black under the brilliant lights. He could not have been older than 35, perhaps 40, but he moved with the weight of someone who had seen far too much. The suit he wore likely cost more than I made in a year. It was a perfectly tailored black, with cufflinks made of platinum or white gold that flashed in the light. But it was not his expensive clothing that stole my breath. It was the way every person near him seemed to take a step away, creating a silent, empty ring of respect around him. It was the way two men in similar dark suits stood nearby at a polite distance. Their eyes never stopped moving, scanning the entire ballroom. Their hands stayed close to their jackets in a way that suggested they were armed. He pointed a chin toward my tray. "You were about to lose that." I glanced down and saw the champagne flute was still tilted at a dangerous angle. My face flushed with heat as I quickly set it straight. "Thank you." His next question was not arrogant, but strangely soft and inquisitive. "Do you have any idea who I am? Should I?" A brief expression crossed his dark eyes. It was amusement, maybe even intrigue. "Most people in this room do." The words escaped with more bitterness than I intended. I am not most people. The poison of the last few months was in my tone. A slight curve touched his lips, not quite a full smile. "No, I am beginning to see that you are not." From across the room, Sophia's laughter echoed. It was the same rehearsed laugh she used to practice in the mirror of our old apartment, the one she insisted sounded both friendly and elegant. She was proudly displaying her engagement ring to a small group of wealthy women. The diamond on her finger blazed like a tiny star. It was my diamond, the one Marcus had paid for with the profits from the business deal we had worked on together. He had taken all my research, stolen all my connections, and passed the entire project off as his own. The stranger followed my stare and remarked, his voice suddenly colder, "That is a very large stone. It ought to be." The words just came out. "It was purchased with stolen money." Stolen? I immediately bit my tongue. What was I doing? You do not pour out your heart to a rich man at a party where your only job is to be unseen. I should not have said that. "Please excuse me. I have to return to my duties." His hand closed around my wrist, stopping me. The grip was not harsh, but it was absolute. His fingers felt warm, and I could feel rough calluses that a man in a $10,000 suit should not have. "What is your name, Elena?" The lie was automatic. I had been using my middle name for this job, trying to save my real name, Natalia, for the broken pieces of the life I once had. He said the name Elena slowly, as if he were savoring a fine vintage. "My name is Mr. Castellano." An anxious man in an ill-fitting tuxedo hurried toward us, holding a data slate. "Sir, the signature for the Hong Kong deal is needed, and the senator is inquiring about the donation." "Not at this moment, Michael." The man, Castellano, never took his eyes off me. The anxious man went white. "But the deadline, sir," I said. "Not at this moment." His tone was level, yet the air in our small section of the ballroom seemed to drop 10 degrees. The man scurried away, almost tripping over himself in his haste. Castellano turned his focus back to me, his expression softening slightly. "You mentioned some stolen money. It is not important." I wrenched my wrist from his grasp, realizing with a jolt that we were being watched. A waitress does not chat with the guests, particularly not with guests who reduce powerful men to nervous wrecks. "What if I were to say it is important?" He moved a step nearer, and I smelled it again, a mix of sandalwood and danger. "What if I were to say that I have a deep dislike for thieves?" My heart pounded against my chest. I saw something in his gaze that hinted he was talking about more than just corporate crime. This was someone who grasped the concept of theft on a scale I could barely comprehend. In that case, we would have something in common. The words tumbled out of me before I could think. "Do you see that woman over there?" He nodded discreetly toward Sophia, who was busy smiling for the cameras. Marcus stood next to her, grinning, as if he had just won a grand prize. "The woman wearing your stolen ring. How could you know that? I observe things." His eyes locked with mine. "And you are not as unnoticeable as you believe you are, Elena. The way my false name rolled off his tongue made my skin crawl, as if he knew my secret but chose to play along. She used to be my closest friend. The words left a bitter taste, and he was the man I was going to marry until I arrived home early 3 months ago and discovered them together. I cut myself off. Why was I telling this man any of this? I am sorry. You do not need to hear my story. Quite the opposite. He reached inside his jacket, and for a second I flinched. But he only removed a business card. It was made of thick paper, with raised lettering I could not make out in the dim light. I find your story extremely interesting. Why? His smile was now full of sharp angles. Because, Elena, that woman has also stolen from someone I value deeply, and in my world, all theft must be repaid. Before I could process his words, Sophia's voice sliced through the air between us. Daddy. I could only watch in horror as Sophia floated toward us, with Marcus following her. Like a well-trained dog, she was glowing, completely unaware of the ice-cold look that had taken over Castellano's face. Daddy, no. This could not be happening. The world could not be this cruel. Daddy, I have been searching all over for you. Sophia kissed the air beside both of his cheeks. I saw him go rigid for just a second. Marcus and I want you to meet the Hendersons. They are thinking about investing in his new company. Her eyes passed over me with zero recognition, the same empty look the rich give to the help. Sophia. Castellano's voice was cold enough to freeze fire. I think you are acquainted with this young lady. Sophia's eyes came back to me, narrowing as she struggled to remember where she had seen me. Understanding slowly appeared on her face, followed by a brief moment of fear, and then pure disdain. Natalia? What are you doing here? So much for my disguise. Working. I held my tray up a little, hating the weak sound of my own voice. Some of us have to make a living. Marcus came forward, his handsome features arranged into a mask of fake sympathy. Nat, I truly hope there are no hard feelings. What happened with us was a shame, but Sophia and I... A shame? The word burst out of me. You took 2 years of my work, claimed it was yours, used my contacts to get a promotion, and left me with absolutely nothing. And then you started seeing my best friend while I was at home planning our wedding. That is not a shame, Marcus. That is betrayal. That is a very serious thing to say, Marcus replied, his voice becoming smooth and practiced like a lawyer's. And it is completely untrue. The work was a joint effort, and if you believe I was given too much credit... Joint effort? I moved toward him, forgetting the tray completely. I have the emails, Marcus. I have the drafts with my name on them. I have timestamps that prove I wrote every single formula and every single forecast. Enough? Sophia interrupted, her perfect image finally starting to crack. God, Natalia, you are so pathetic. Why can you not just move on? Marcus did not steal a thing. You are simply too insecure to admit he is more gifted than you, Sophia. Castellano's voice sliced through her tirade. Get back. She blinked, thrown off balance. Daddy, you are not getting it. She has been bothering us. I said, get back. His tone left no space for debate. Sophia stepped back, a mixture of bewilderment and alarm crossing her features. I had never witnessed her being scared of her father. She always described him as an absentee but kind businessman who was often away. The man beside me, however, did not seem absent. He seemed deadly. Mr. Castellano, Marcus began, holding out his hand. My apologies for this disturbance. Natalia has been struggling to come to terms with our engagement. Castellano paid the offered hand no mind. His gaze was fixed on me, and something in it made me hold my breath. It was not compassion, but something darker, more powerful. Is your claim about the research true? Yes. I held his gaze without wavering, while my hands trembled. I have proof. Father, she is not telling the truth, Sophia insisted, clutching his arm. Marcus and I are engaged. Are you going to trust a bitter ex-girlfriend over your own child? For a very long moment, Castellano was silent. He then glanced at one of the men in dark suits standing close by. Vincent, please take Miss Romano to my vehicle. We are departing. What? No. Sophia's voice became a shrill cry. Father, what is this about? I am taking you home. Marcus, I will call you. Do not visit the house until you hear from me. He looked at me once more, and I recognized a calculating glint in his eyes. And you, Natalia, are coming with us. Me? Why? You claimed you could substantiate your claims. I wish to see the evidence. Sir, I am on the clock. I am not free to go. You are no longer on the clock. He gestured to Vincent, who took out his phone and made a short call. Your manager has been handsomely paid for your time. This was unbelievable. I needed to say no. I needed to escape. But I found myself nodding instead, compelled by a force I could not identify. Perhaps it was his immediate defense of me, without any doubt. Perhaps it was the chance for a justice I believed was gone for good. Or maybe it was the lingering warmth on my wrist where his fingers had been. Good. Castellano put a hand on the small of my back, steering me to the exit. The heat of his touch seared through the cheap fabric of my uniform. We have a great deal to talk about. As we moved past Sophia and Marcus, I saw the raw anger on Sophia's face and the rising terror in Marcus's eyes. They believed they had won. They thought I was finished. They were completely unaware they had just provoked a fight with a very dangerous man, and so was I. The vehicle was completely different from my expectations. I had pictured leather upholstery and dark windows, possibly a divider for privacy. What I entered was a mobile vault, a black Mercedes Maybach with windows so dark they were like black stone, armored plating I could feel in the solid sound the doors made, and equipment that likely cost more than the house I grew up in. Vincent was behind the wheel. A second man, more muscular, with a scar down his left cheek, occupied the front passenger seat. Both remained quiet, professional, their gazes constantly sweeping the mirrors. I was in the back next to Castellano, with Sophia on his other side. The air inside felt thick and heavy despite the car's generous size. Sophia shot hateful looks at me while trying to win over her father with tears that never seemed to fall. Daddy, stop. This is so embarrassing for me. Marcus is still there. As far as I'm concerned, Marcus can wait forever. Castellano's focus remained on his phone, his fingers gliding over the screen with expert speed. In fact, Marcus should probably begin searching for a new financial backer and a new woman to marry. What? The word escaped Sophia's lips as a crack. You cannot be serious. I am always serious about thieves, Sophia. You are aware of this. He finally turned to her, and the profound disappointment in his gaze was enough to make me wince. How long did you know about his actions? Sophia's mouth hung open. He did not do it. Natalia is making it up. Tell me again. His voice became a low, threatening murmur. And when you do, recall that my entire fortune was built on my ability to spot a lie. The quiet that came after was palpable, crackling with energy. I shrank against the car door, suddenly grasping that I was confined in a tight area with a very powerful man and his daughter, who was growing more frantic by the second. 6 months, Sophia at last confessed in a whisper. I have known for 6 months. My stomach twisted into a knot. 6 months. This meant she knew before Marcus had even asked me to marry him, before she had helped me look at reception halls and sample cakes, before she had comforted me when I was distraught over my mother's worsening condition, assuring me that things would get better. You knew, I whispered, the sting of her betrayal feeling fresh and raw. You knew all along. It was not about you, Nat, Sophia said, avoiding my stare. Marcus had to get that promotion. His parents were putting pressure on him to get married. And you would have been fine. You are brilliant. You always recover. So, you ruined her professional life and took credit for her discoveries to benefit your boyfriend? Castellano's voice was as sharp as broken glass. And then you had the nerve to celebrate it in her presence while she was serving you champagne at your engagement party. I did not realize she would be working that event. Sophia's tears were real this time, flowing down her perfectly applied makeup. Besides, I am not the one who took anything. Marcus was the one who... Enough. That single word cut her off completely. Castellano looked at me, his dark eyes holding a gentler light than when he looked at his daughter. Where is your home, Natalia? Why do you ask? Because you will be showing me this evidence you have, and after that, we will determine the next steps. I can send you the files by email. I have no faith in emails. They are too simple to forge, too simple to compromise. His eyes held mine. I much prefer to confirm things in person, unless there is another place you must be. Was there? I looked at the time on the car's display. 9:47 p.m. My work at the event was supposed to be over at midnight, with another hour of tidying up. I would have gotten home around 2, fallen into bed, and woken up at 6 for my morning job at the cafe. It was the same crushing routine I had been stuck in ever since Marcus's betrayal took away my career, my home, and my entire future. No, I confessed in a low voice, I have nowhere else to be. Excellent. He leaned forward and spoke to Vincent. Go to Miss Romano's address first, and then we will return to my home. We traveled through Manhattan without a word, the city lights a blur outside the dark windows. I gave Vincent my address in Washington Heights, a 4th-floor walk-up, in a complex where the elevator was only functional on Tuesdays, and the corridor was permanently thick with the smells of cooking grease and failure. When the car stopped at the curb, I noticed Sophia's nose crinkle in revulsion. You live in this place? Not everyone has a family fortune, I retorted, as I reached for the door. Castellano's hand closed around my wrist again, with that same strong, yet careful pressure. Vincent will inspect the building before we go in. It is standard procedure. Procedure for what? For staying alive. He stated it matter-of-factly, as if talking about the forecast. Vincent and the scarred man, whose name I still did not know, got out of the car and went inside my building. 5 minutes later, Vincent came back and gave Castellano a nod. All clear, sir. 4th floor, apartment 4C. 1 resident. No indication of surveillance or forced entry. How did he have my specific apartment? I had only provided the building address. Castellano must have read the question on my face. I am very thorough, Natalia. It is the reason I am still here. He pushed his door open, then stopped. Sophia, you will remain here with Marco. But, Daddy, stay here. He exited the vehicle, then pivoted to extend his hand to me. I looked at it for a second. He had strong fingers with those strange calluses, and a platinum ring on his right hand etched with symbols I did not recognize. Taking his hand was more than just accepting help from a car. It felt like I was crossing into a new life. I accepted it. His hold was warm and firm, and he did not let go immediately once I was on the broken pavement. We stood there for a moment, his thumb brushing over my knuckles in a way that seemed completely natural for him. You can lead the way, he said softly. The journey up 4 flights of stairs felt like an eternity. I was intensely aware of his presence behind me, seeming to fill the entire cramped stairwell. Vincent and Marco stood guard around us, their gazes checking every dark spot, every corner. We saw Mrs. Chin on the 3rd floor, and her eyes grew large, seeing the men in suits before she hurried back into her apartment. My hands were trembling as I unlocked my door. The apartment was precisely what one would expect for $800 a month in that area. It was a studio that was barely bigger than a walk-in closet, with a kitchen area that was just a hot plate and a small refrigerator. The bathroom was so small you could sit on the toilet and wash your hands at the same time. The fold-out bed was still down from that morning because I had forgotten to put it away. I was so embarrassed I could have disappeared. Castellano walked in, and the room instantly seemed to shrink. Vincent stayed in the hall, while Marco remained at the base of the stairs. The door closed with a click, and I was suddenly by myself with a man who could make powerful men tremble and his own daughter weep with just one word. "It is not much," I stated, even though it was obvious. "It is tidy and organized." His gaze moved across the room, noting my used furniture, the pile of books from the library on the windowsill, and the picture of my mother on the small desk. "You are getting by, but just barely." I went to my laptop, a 5-year-old machine held together by hope and electrical tape. "The evidence is on here. Everything I have that proves the work was originally mine." He moved to stand behind me, so close that I could sense his body heat and smell that captivating scent of sandalwood and something like danger. I attempted to concentrate on opening the files, but my fingers were clumsy on the keyboard. "Breathe, Natalia." His voice was low, creating an intimate feeling in the tiny apartment. "I am not here to harm you." "How can I know that for sure?" The question was sharper than I meant it to be. "I do not even know who you are, only that your daughter betrayed me and that you seem to have enough wealth to pay off my supervisor without a second thought. For all I know, you are some kind of criminal." He completed my thought with a hint of dark humor. "Would that scare you?" "It is supposed to, is it not?" Most people would answer yes. He reached over me, his arm brushing against mine as he selected a file folder. "But you remain here, showing me what you have. You are either very brave or very desperate. Perhaps both." I opened the initial document, my first research proposal from 2 years ago, which had tracked changes that showed Marcus's later input that was really him just stealing credit. Look, this is how it began. For the following hour, Castellano examined every single thing. He was systematic, posing questions that revealed a keen business intellect. He found inconsistencies I had overlooked. He pointed out timestamps that showed Marcus had entered my cloud drive without my consent. There were emails where he sent my research to company leaders under his own name. "This is absolutely damning," he said at last, standing up straight from his position, leaning over my shoulder. "With this information, you could sue him for stealing intellectual property, for defamation, and for fraud. You could end his career before it gets started." "I tried," I said, and the confession was painful. I made formal complaints to the company, but Marcus had already built connections with the leadership. They dismissed it as a simple misunderstanding and claimed I had misinterpreted the teamwork dynamic. 2 weeks after that, I was terminated for poor performance. "And you did not continue to fight? With what resources?" I turned to him, my frustration and weariness finally erupting. "I had no savings for lawyers, no influential contacts. The family of Marcus has money and power. I am a nobody. Just a woman from Queens whose mother is in a nursing home I cannot afford, and whose best friend," my voice failed me. "I thought she cared about me. I thought we were family." A change occurred in Castellano's expression. The calculating business mind vanished, and in its place was something more raw and human. He reached out and his fingers lightly touched my jaw, guiding my face upward to look into his eyes. "You are not nothing, Natalia." His thumb moved over my cheekbone, brushing away a tear I hadn't felt fall. "And you are no longer by yourself." "Why does this matter to you?" I breathed. We are strangers. No. His hand slid to the nape of my neck, his fingers weaving into my hair with a touch that felt both gentle and claiming. But I understand the sting of family betrayal, and I understand my daughter has become a person I do not know, a person who is cruel and feels entitled. You did not deserve what they put you through. What is your plan? His smile returned, all sharp angles, dangerous and dark. I plan to give you exactly what you are owed: justice, payback, and a life where you do not need 3 jobs to stay afloat. He stopped, his gaze holding mine. But only if you allow it. I do not understand. Come and work for me. Live here in my house. I have far more room than I need, and all the resources to help you rebuild your career, to strike back at Marcus the right way. In return, he paused, a hint of something vulnerable in his expression. In return, you will be a reminder to my daughter of what true character is. The idea was madness. To move in with a man I did not know, to take help from someone whose name I had only just learned an hour before. Every logical part of my mind was screaming at me, but logic had failed me completely. Following the rules, having faith in the system, and believing in what was fair had left me shattered and isolated in this small apartment, working to the brink of collapse just to exist. What is your full name? I asked him suddenly. Dante. Dante Castellano? He met my eyes without wavering. And before you ask what your gut is already screaming, yes, I am precisely the sort of man that polite company warned you to avoid. I created my empire through means that would make you flee in terror if you knew what they were. But I have never once lied about who I am, and I have never once betrayed a person who placed their trust in me. Sophia trusted you. Sophia exploited my love for her and used it as an excuse for her cruelty. There is a distinction. His hold on my neck tightened just a little. I am presenting you with a choice, Natalia. You can stay here and continue to scrape by day after day while they enjoy a life of luxury built on your stolen ideas, or you can join me and take back everything that was stolen from you. My heart pounded in my chest. This was a critical moment. I could feel it. The second I stepped over this line, there was no returning to the safety of being unknown and poor. But then again, what real safety had that life ever given me? Okay, I breathed out. I will come with you. The smile that formed on his lips was victorious and possessive, and it should have made me afraid. Instead, a warmth spread through my stomach. A dangerous heat I had not felt since before Marcus had betrayed me. Good girl. His thumb gently brushed my lower lip. Pack whatever you need. We are leaving in 10 minutes. He let me go and stepped away, taking out his phone to make a few quiet calls, while I threw clothes into a duffel bag with trembling hands. I was abandoning my whole life for a man I did not know. I was stepping into a world I could not comprehend, but as I zipped the bag shut and looked up to see Dante watching me with those dark, piercing eyes, I felt something I had not experienced in 3 months: hope. And something else, too. Something darker and more thrilling: desire. Dante's residence was not a home. It was a declaration of power, built with stone and iron. We drove for 40 minutes, away from the city. Vincent drove down roads lined with trees, where large estates were concealed behind gates and walls. When we finally came to a stop, it was before wrought iron gates that were at least 12 feet high, with sensors on top that likely cost more than a typical car. A guard came out of a small building, recognized our vehicle instantly, and the gates opened without anyone saying a word. The driveway seemed to stretch on forever, twisting through perfectly kept grounds where security lights made bright circles in the darkness. I saw glimpses of fountains, gardens, and buildings that were probably guest houses. Then the main house appeared out of the shadows. It was a modern mansion, made of glass and stone. It had 3 stories of sharp angles and windows that went from the floor to the ceiling, all lit up from inside like a huge lantern. Sophia had been completely silent for the entire trip, pressed against her door like a hurt animal. Now she moved, her voice quiet. "Daddy, I am sorry. Please, can we just discuss this? Go to your room now." Dante did not even glance at her as Vincent opened her door. "We will address your future in the morning. But Marcus is no longer someone you need to worry about." His tone left no room for argument. "If he tries to get in touch with you, Vincent will take care of it. Is that understood?" Sophia's face fell, but she nodded and ran into the house. The sound of her heels echoing on the marble floor, I remained motionless in my seat, suddenly crushed by the weight of my decision. This was not simply money. This was an entirely different universe, a place where guards walked the property and adult women followed the one-word orders of their fathers. Having second thoughts, Dante's voice was quiet, almost as if he understood. "I am having about 100 of them." His laugh was a surprise, deep and real. "Good. It proves you are intelligent." He got out of the car and held out his hand to me once more. "Come, let me show you to your room." The inside of the house made the outside seem plain. The entry hall alone was bigger than my whole apartment, featuring a grand double staircase that swept up to the second level. Modern art on the walls I knew from auction books, and marble floors so polished they mirrored my own image. A wrinkled uniform, messy hair, and pure exhaustion etched on my face. I appeared to be exactly what I was, a worker coming inside. Widened. "Mrs. Chen will guide you to your room," Dante announced, and I almost laughed at the familiar name before I saw it was a different Mrs. Chen. This was a graceful woman in her 60s who emerged from a nearby hallway with a smile that was both warm and sincere. "Miss Romano, welcome. I have made the East Wing guest suite ready for you." Her accent was sharp, possibly British. "Please follow me." I looked back at Dante, a desperate piece of me searching for a sign that I was not making the worst choice of my life. He watched me with a look I could not place. It was possessive, protective, and hungry all at once. It should have terrified me. Instead, a warm feeling spread across my skin. "Sleep well, Natalia. Tomorrow, we start to mend what they have broken." The guest suite was more spacious than some city apartments I had considered. A living area opened into a bedroom with a king-sized bed covered in sheets that must have cost thousands of dollars. The bathroom featured a deep soaking tub. The shower had so many nozzles I lost count, and the towels were so plush they felt like being wrapped in a cloud. Mrs. Chen explained where to find everything, told me breakfast was at 7, but I could have it brought sooner. Then she left with a soft instruction to use the intercom if I needed anything at all. Finally alone, I fell onto the bed and stared up at the ceiling, my thoughts racing. 24 hours ago, I was counting coins to pay for the subway. Now I was surrounded by a level of luxury that I could not have fathomed, brought here by a man who radiated menace and spoke of vengeance as casually as their people talked about what to have for dinner. I needed to call someone, but who was there? My mother would not even recall the conversation, her mind lost in the haze of dementia. I had no other friends left. Sophia was once my closest confidant, and she had ruined that friendship completely. No brothers or sisters, no cousins I spoke with. I was isolated, floating in this bizarre, new existence. The only thing grounding me was a man whose complete name I had learned only a few hours ago. When sleep finally came, It was broken by dreams of dark eyes and threatening smiles. The morning began with a quiet knock at my door. I woke with a start, confused by the strange ceiling, the incredibly soft bedding, and a silence not disturbed by street noise or neighbors yelling through cheap walls. "Miss Romano, Mr. Castellano would like you to join him for breakfast," came Mrs. Chen's voice, which was polite but firm. I took a quick shower, uncomfortably aware that my only clothes were the ones I had thrown into a bag. Inexpensive jeans and tops from a discount store, nothing suitable for whatever this new life required. I chose the least creased outfit I had and went downstairs, drawn by the scent of coffee and fresh baking. The dining room had massive windows that looked out on gardens that appeared to go on forever. Dante was at the head of a table that could host 20 people, wearing charcoal trousers and a black shirt, its sleeves pushed up to his elbows, showing forearms that were dense with muscle and marked with old scars. He was looking at something on a tablet, with a cup of coffee nearby, appearing both at ease and poised for sudden violence. He looked up when I came in, and his expression seemed to soften. "Did you sleep well?" "Better than I have in months." The confession felt too honest. "Good." He pointed to the chair right next to him, not at the other end of the table, but close enough to touch. "Sit. Eat. After that, we have things to accomplish." The breakfast spread was ridiculously large. There was fresh fruit, pastries, and eggs cooked 3 separate ways. The bacon was real, not like the cardboard I was used to. I put food on my plate with hesitation, feeling his gaze on me the entire time. "Where is Sophia?" I asked, feeling the need to fill the quiet. "Sleeping off a crying spell." His voice was like ice. "Or maybe she is scheming a new way to trick me into forgiving her. Regardless, she is not your problem today. She is your daughter. She is a stranger who looks like my daughter." He put the tablet down, giving me his complete attention. The child I brought up would never have taken part in such thoughtless cruelty. Either I was a failure as a father, or she has decided to become a person I cannot recognize. The outcome is the same either way. The hurt in his voice was surprising. It was genuine. I had been so wrapped up in my own sense of betrayal that I had not thought about his. To learn that your own child is capable of such cruelty, to be forced to pick between love and justice. "I am sorry," I said softly. "Do not be. This is not your fault." He reached over, his fingers lightly touching mine as they rested near my coffee cup. "And I was serious last night. I am going to help you reclaim what is yours." "How?" His smile was that of a predator. "I have already begun. Vincent worked all night, gathering proof, comparing your projects to Marcus's work, and creating a perfect case. Before the week is over, we will have more than enough to ruin him both in his career and in court. That will be decided by how far you are willing to go." His thumb made slow circles on my palm, a movement that felt casual but sent a jolt of electricity up my arm. "I have attorneys who are experts in the theft of intellectual property. They cost a fortune, but they are ruthless." Or, he stopped, a dangerous glint appearing in his eyes. "I have alternative solutions that are less legal, but much more decisive." "What sort of solutions?" "The kind that guarantee Marcus never finds work in your industry again. The kind that teach him what it feels like to take something from a person who is under my protection." His hand tightened just a little, "But the choice is yours, Natalia. I will not push you onto a road you do not want to take. I should have been disgusted. I should have understood the unspoken threat, the hint of violence just beneath the surface. But all I could summon was a grim satisfaction, a need for justice that had festered inside me since I found Marcus with Sophia in our bed. I want him to lose it all." My own voice surprised me, just like I did. I want him to feel his world get torn apart by someone he trusted. Then that is what will happen. Dante raised my hand to his mouth, and his kiss on my knuckles felt like a seal. A promise. Someone cleared their throat in the doorway. Vincent stood there, his face a perfect mask of neutrality. Sir, Marcus Thorne is here. He is demanding to see Miss Sophia. A predatory look flickered across Dante's features. Is he really? Our security team has him contained. He became physical when they denied him access. He did? Dante let go of my hand, and it seemed to take a great deal of effort. Have them escort him to my office. And Vincent, make it clear that this is not an invitation. Vincent's smile was all sharp edges. I understand, sir. When he was gone, Dante faced me again. Do you wish to be present for this meeting? My pulse was a drum against my ribs. What are you planning to do? Nothing that will put me behind bars, if that is what you are worried about. He got to his feet and held out his hand. But I believe it is time Marcus learned who he is truly dealing with, and more importantly, who he betrayed. I accepted his hand, and he pulled me up. We were standing very close, so close I could see the gold sparks in his dark eyes. I could trace the faint lines by their corners, a sign that he smiled more often than his reputation suggested. Why are you doing all this? The question slipped out before I could stop it. Is it really just for Sophia? No. His hand rose to cup my cheek. His touch was unbelievably gentle, for a man who moved with such danger. This is about you, Natalia. From the I saw you in that ballroom, the moment I arrived. You were trying to disappear, but your eyes were on fire with pain and anger. I knew I had to learn your story. And when I found out what they did to you, his jaw tightened. In my world, no one is allowed to destroy something beautiful and get away with it. I am not beautiful. The words came from a deep, broken place inside me. I am broke and tired. And you are a survivor. His thumb gently grazed my lower lip, and I stopped breathing. You continued to fight when the system let you down. You fought even after the people you loved betrayed you. You took on 3 jobs instead of quitting. That is not just beautiful, Natalia. It is strength wrapped in grace. It is the most compelling kind of danger. The space between us crackled with energy. I could smell his cologne. I saw the pulse beating in his throat. I felt the heat coming from his body. This was crazy. I had known him for less than 24 hours. He was Sophia's father, a man who talked about illegal solutions as if they were normal and employed armed men. But the way he looked at me, as if I were a precious thing he planned to both protect and own, made all rational thought evaporate. We should go, Mom, I managed to say, my voice rough. Before Marcus leaves. Yes. But he did not move. His gaze searched my own. But first, there is something you need to understand. Once we begin this, once we start this war, your old life is gone forever. Marcus will not forgive you for this. Sophia will not either. You will have to choose a side. And my side, he paused. My side is complex and dangerous. Are you certain this is what you want? I thought about my tiny apartment and my 3 jobs, of the way Marcus and Sophia had mocked my suffering. I thought about all the nights. I had cried until I fell asleep. I remembered every morning I woke up and wondered if I had the strength to continue. I am sure, I said, meeting his eyes without flinching. Show me what they truly took from me. Show me what justice looks like in your world. His smile was slow and dangerous, filled with a dark promise. With pleasure. He linked his fingers with mine and guided me to his study. With every step, I felt the final pieces of my old self fall away. I was walking straight into a fire. I was aware of that. But I hoped that maybe, just maybe, I would emerge from the flames forged into something stronger, something they would regret ever trying to break. Dante's study was a world of dark wood and leather. Bookshelves stretched from the floor to the ceiling, filled with books that looked read, not just displayed. A huge desk commanded the room, its top empty, except for a laptop and a crystal bottle of amber liquid. But what held my gaze was Marcus, standing between two of Dante's security men. His expensive suit was wrinkled, and his perfect hair was a mess. He looked frightened. "Good. Mr. Thorne?" Dante's voice was polite, which made it sound more menacing. "Thank you for coming on my invitation." "I did not really have a choice," Marcus retorted, aiming for confidence, but failing. His eyes landed on me, standing next to Dante, and a flicker of confusion crossed his face. "Natalia, what are you doing here? She lives here now?" Dante said plainly, turning to pour himself a drink. He did not get one for Marcus. "I do not understand." Marcus looked from me to Dante, and I watched the understanding slowly appear on his face. I saw how his skin went pale and how he swallowed hard. "You and her? But Sophia told me you were just her father. She never said anything about—" "What my daughter decides to tell people about my affairs is her own business." Dante sat down in his chair with the fluid ease of a predator. "But let us get to the point, Marcus. You took Natalia's intellectual property, her career opportunities, and 2 years of her life. By doing that, you took from a person who is now under my protection. That is a problem." "I did not take anything." Marcus's voice grew louder. "The work was a collaboration. If there was a misunderstanding about the credit, Vincent." Dante did not raise his voice. Vincent moved forward with a tablet, holding it out for Marcus to see. "Here are the files, with timestamps showing Miss Romano's original work. Here are your submissions to the company, dated weeks later. Here are the emails where you sent her private research without her consent. And here," he tapped the screen, "are the messages where you took direct credit for algorithms you did not create." The color drained from Marcus's face, leaving it ashen. "Where did you get that?" "I am very skilled at obtaining information," Dante said casually. "It is one of the reasons I am so successful. Now, this is what is going to happen. You will sign a document where you admit to the theft. You will resign from your job with a public statement that gives Natalia credit for the research you stole, and you will pay her restitution for the wages and opportunities she lost." "That is crazy," Marcus staggered back. "I will be ruined. No one in this business will ever hire me." Yes, Dante's smile was icy. "That is precisely the point. You cannot do this. I will fight it. I will." Marcus's eyes grew hard. "I will go to the police. I will tell them you are threatening me, forcing me." "With what proof?" Dante leaned forward, and the room seemed to get colder. "You arrived here on your own, demanding to speak with my daughter. The security cameras will show you becoming hostile at the gate. Nobody threatened you, Marcus. We are just having a discussion about ethics and their consequences." "Sophia will never forgive you for this," Marcus spat, desperation creeping into his tone. "She loves me." "My daughter is 26 years old and has shown poor judgment," Dante said without emotion. "But she is still my daughter. You, on the other hand, are just a problem that I need to resolve. So, you are left with 2 choices. You can sign the papers, make a public confession, and leave with your health intact. Or you can refuse, and you will learn the true extent of my influence." The threat was clear in the air, simple and terrifying. "This is illegal," Marcus said weakly. "Probably," Dante shrugged. "But to prove it, you would have to explain why you are here, which means admitting what you stole. And Marcus, I have much better lawyers than you can ever afford. More importantly, I have less to lose. Can you say the same? I watched Marcus's face shift through a range of emotions: anger, fear, and calculation. His gaze kept darting toward me, and I saw the moment he chose a new approach. Nat, please. He took a step my way, and Vincent instantly moved to block him. You do not get what you are doing. This man is dangerous. He is mixed up in things that could destroy you. I made mistakes, yes, but hurting you was never my intention. We can figure this out. Just you and me. Just you and me. The laugh that came out of me was bitter. Like when you and Sophia were figuring things out in my bed, or when you figured things out by passing my research off as your own. No, Marcus, we are finished figuring things out. You are making a mistake, he hissed, the mask falling to reveal the ugly truth underneath. He will use you and then discard you. That is what men like him do. Men like me, Dante said in a low, dangerous tone, keep our promises. That is more than I can say for you. He stood and buttoned his jacket with slow precision. You have until 5 o'clock today to make your decision. Sign the documents Vincent sends you, or prepare for what comes next. And Marcus, if you try to contact Natalia, Sophia, or anyone else in this house again, without my permission, this offer is off the table. Is that clear? Marcus gave me one final look, his eyes pleading. There was a time when that look would have affected me. I once loved this man enough to imagine a life with him. All I felt now was a cold and deep satisfaction. Get him out of my house, Dante ordered, and Vincent and the other man led Marcus out of the room. His protests faded as they pulled him down the hall. A heavy silence filled the study. I stood there, unmoving, my hands shaking from adrenaline and something else. Maybe it was vindication, or the first taste of getting even. It felt better than I ever thought it would. It felt like I had power. Are you all right? Dante's voice was suddenly right behind me. I am not sure. I turned to look at him. I should feel bad, right? He looked terrified. He should be terrified. Dante's hand came to rest on my waist, a warm and possessive touch. He hurt you. He used you. He stole from you. And he was foolish enough to believe he would face no consequences. But what you are doing, it is not exactly legal, right? Very few of my activities fit perfectly within legal boundaries, Natalia. His other hand rose to tilt my chin up, making me look into his eyes. I work in the gray areas, in the places where the law is too slow or too broken to deliver real justice. Does that scare you? It should have. Every logical part of my brain knew it should. No, I whispered. It does not. His eyes darkened with an intensity that sent heat coiling deep inside me. Dangerous girl. Do you not know you are supposed to run from men like me? I am tired of running. The words felt like they were pulled from my soul. I am tired of being weak. Tired of people taking things from me. Maybe it is time I learned how to be dangerous. Is that what you want? His thumb traced my lower lip, a gesture that was now intimate and familiar. To learn how to bite back? Yes. The single word hung between us, heavy with meaning beyond revenge or justice. Or it was a promise, a surrender, and a declaration of war on the woman I used to be. The control I had seen Dante use like a weapon against Marcus appeared to crack. His grip on my waist tightened, pulling me tight against his body. I could feel the hard proof of his want against my hip. Natalia. My name was a warning, a question, and a plea all at once. I knew I should step back. This was happening too quickly. It was too much, too complicated. He was the father of the woman who betrayed me. He admitted to being a criminal. He was a man who could ruin lives with a single phone call. But for 3 months, I had been careful, I had been good, and I had followed rules that only left me broken. And in this moment, with his body against mine and his dark eyes burning into me. I did not want to be careful any longer. I stood on my toes and pressed my lips to his. For a fraction of a second, he went completely still. It might have been surprise, or it might have been a final chance for me to back away. Then a low sound rumbled in his chest, and he took complete control. One hand tangled in my hair, while the other spread wide across my back, locking me in place as he consumed my mouth with a hunger that should have frightened me. It did not. Instead, it sparked something I thought Marcus had destroyed forever. Desire, longing, the pure thrill of being wanted, as if I were something rare and essential. Dante moved me backward until I felt the hard spines of books against my shoulder blades, pinning me to the bookshelf with his own body. His kiss was nothing like the careful, measured affection from Marcus. This was a claiming, a statement, a brand that marked me as his in a way that words never could. "Tell me to stop," he rasped against my mouth, his hand sliding under my shirt to rest on my bare skin. "Tell me this is crazy, and we should slow down. Do not stop." I pulled him even closer, my own fingers digging into his hair. "Do not you dare stop." He groaned, a sound that was both surrender and victory, as he took my mouth again. His hand traveled higher, closing over the curve of my breast, and a gasp escaped me. It had been so long since a man had touched me this way, as if I was craved, needed, and adored. A knock on the door made the moment explode into a million pieces. We jumped apart, both of us breathing heavily. My fingers had made a mess of the Dante's hair. His lips were swollen, and his eyes were wild with a barely restrained need. I was certain I looked even worse. My face was hot, and I felt completely undone. "What?" Dante's voice was a low growl of pure danger. "Sir, Miss Sophia is asking for you." It was Mrs. Chen's voice, always polite but firm. "She is very insistent." Dante shut his eyes, taking a visible moment to regain his composure. When he opened them, the cold mask was back, but his eyes were still burning when they met mine. "Let her know I will be there in 10 minutes. He did not move until he heard Mrs. Chen's footsteps retreat down the hall. Then he turned to me. "We have to discuss this. What just happened between us?" "Do we?" I tried to straighten my shirt, but my hands were shaking. "It seems pretty obvious what happened, Natalia." He moved toward me, but kept a small distance, as if he did not trust himself to get any closer. "I am not a good man. I have done things that would make you see me in a different light, and you are in a vulnerable state right now. You are hurt and angry, and—" "What?" A spike of anger cut through me. "You believe I kissed you because I am broken? Because I am so starved for attention that I would fall for the first man to show me any kindness?" "Number." His jaw was tight. "But I believe you deserve someone better than a man whose empire is built on the fear of others. Someone who can offer you a normal, safe life. I do not want normal." The words burst out of me. Normal is what got me betrayed and shattered. Safe left me with nothing. Maybe I want something dangerous. Maybe I want a man who sees me the way you do. As if I am worth setting the entire world on fire for. The silence that stretched between us was electric, alive with unspoken things. "You have no idea what you are asking for," Dante said at last, his voice thick and raw. "Then show me." I took a step forward, made bold by the hunger I could still see in his eyes. "Show me what it means to belong to you. Because at this moment, that feels like the only real thing left in my world." His control shattered. He pulled me into a crushing embrace. His mouth crashed down on mine with a bruising force. This kiss was no longer about discovery. It was about possession. His hands roamed my body as if he were memorizing every line, every curve, searing his touch. into my skin. Mine, he snarled against my throat, his teeth grazing the sensitive skin there. Say it, Natalia. Tell me you are mine, yours. The word was a breathless, desperate whisper. I am yours. Another knock sounded, harder this time. Sir, Miss Sophia is becoming extremely agitated. Tell her that I am occupied, Dante called out, his gaze never leaving mine. I will see her when I am good and ready. He kissed me one more time, but slower now. It was a thorough kiss that left no room for doubt about what he wanted. When he finally drew away, we were both shaking. Tonight, he vowed, his thumb gently stroking my swollen lips. We will finish this conversation tonight. But for now, I must go deal with my daughter before she breaks something priceless. I could only nod, not trusting myself to speak. He gave me one last kiss, quick and possessive. Before he straightened his suit and moved to the door, he stopped on the threshold and looked back at me, his eyes promising dark and wonderful things. Do not leave this house today, Natalia. Stay here, where I can be sure you are safe. His words should have sounded like a command, like a cage. Instead, they felt like a shield, like I was something precious enough to be guarded. I will be here, I promised. His smile was pure sin. Good girl. And then he was gone, leaving me alone in his study. My lips were tender from his kisses. My body was an inferno of unspent passion. My head was spinning with how drastically my world had shifted in less than 24 hours. I had come to this house seeking revenge and justice, but now, with the taste of Dante still on my tongue and the feeling of his brand on my skin, I was starting to think I had discovered something much more perilous, something that felt an awful lot like coming home. The rest of the day was spent in a strange, dreamlike state. I explored Dante's home like a lost spirit, wandering through rooms that felt like they belonged to another lifetime. There was a library filled with original editions I was too intimidated to handle. There was a glass conservatory overflowing with orchids that likely cost more than my old apartment's rent. The gym looked like something built for professional athletes. Mrs. Chen discovered me in the sunroom, staring out at a garden where fountains played and stone walkways twisted through flawless green hedges. Miss Romano, Mr. Castellano wanted me to give this to you. She offered me a thin black credit card with my name already printed on it. It is for anything you require, clothes, toiletries, anything that will make you feel more at home. I looked at the card as if it were a venomous snake. I cannot take this. Mr. Castellano was very firm. Her smile was wise and almost motherly. He is not a man who does things without purpose, my dear. When he chooses to offer someone his protection, he is all in. That is what frightens me. I flipped the card over and over in my hand. I have no idea what he expects from me. It is possible he just wants you to be happy. Mrs. Chen gave my shoulder a gentle pat. I have been employed by Mr. Castellano for 15 years. I have seen him be ruthless, cunning, and terrifying when the situation called for it. But I have never once seen him look at any person the way that he looks at you. A blush crept up my neck. We have only just met. Sometimes knowing someone takes a lifetime. Other times, it takes only a single moment. She started for the door but stopped. Miss Sophia is taking her lunch in her suite. Mr. Castellano believed you would rather not have to see her today. That is considerate of him. He can be, when he puts his mind to it. Her face softened. Give him a chance, Miss Romano. Very few people get to see the man behind the fearsome reputation, but I suspect you may be one of the rare few who can. After she went away, I sat with the credit card, turning it endlessly in my fingers. Everything was happening too quickly. My focus should have been on getting my career back, on making Marcus answer for what he did. But instead, all I could think about was the taste of Dante's kiss, the possessive growl in his throat when he called me his. My phone vibrated. It was the cheap burner phone I had been using since I lost my old contract. A message from a number I did not recognize. Marcus signed the papers. A full confession will be made public on Monday. Your name will be cleared. Vincent. I looked at the words, expecting a surge of triumph, the deep satisfaction of seeing justice done. It did come, but it was muted, overshadowed by the thought of Dante's hands on me and his promise of tonight, which lingered like an unresolved chord. What was happening to me? I should have been celebrating. Instead, I found myself counting the hours until I would see him again. The evening came with a slow change in the light from the windows. The house quieted down, settling into its nightly pace. I had showered and put on the most presentable clothes I had. I wished with all my heart that I had something nicer, something that fit the opulence of my new surroundings. A knock at the door of my suite made my heart race. Vincent was standing there, his face professionally blank. Mr. Castellano asks that you join him for dinner. It will be in the private dining room on the second floor. What happened to Sophia? Miss Sophia is dining alone. She was instructed not to disturb you or Mr. Castellano this evening. The walk to dinner felt like it would never end. Vincent guided me through halls filled with priceless art I did not recognize. We passed rooms that showed off generations of wealth. He stopped at huge doors made of dark wood and knocked once before swinging them open. The dining room was private, set for 2 people, and bathed in candlelight. The windows ran from the floor to the ceiling, looking out over gardens where lights twinkled like captured stars. Dante was standing there, his silhouette sharp and beautiful against the night outside. He turned when I came in, and the pure hunger in his eyes made my chest tighten. Natalia. He walked toward me, unhurried, but with purpose. You look beautiful. I look like I am wearing clothes from 3 days ago, because that is all I have. My words sounded sharper than I meant them to. We will take care of that tomorrow, he said. He took my hand and led me toward the table. For tonight, I only want to speak with you. A real conversation, with no distractions and no problems. The staff who served our dinner moved like shadows, appearing and vanishing silently. The wine must have cost a fortune. The food was a masterpiece that I could not taste. My attention was fixed on Dante, sitting opposite me. The candlelight threw shadows on his face, making him appear both threatening and tragically handsome. Tell me about your mother, he said without warning. The question surprised me. Why do you ask? Because she means everything to you. Because I need to understand what forged you into a person who keeps fighting when everyone else would surrender. So I spoke of my mother, who brought me up by herself after my father walked out, who held down 2 jobs so I could go to college, who gave up everything so I could have the chances she never had. I told him about the dementia that came on too soon, the disease that took her away one memory at a time. It left me with stacks of medical bills I could never afford, and a mother who occasionally looked at me like a stranger. The care facility is $4,000 a month, I confessed, my eyes fixed on my glass of wine. I was barely making it work before Marcus ruined my professional life. Now, I am 3 months late with the payments. They have been very understanding, but my voice broke. I am so scared they will make her leave, that I will have to find a cheaper place where no one will care if she is okay or frightened, or they will not. Dante's voice cut through my fear, solid and final. Vincent spoke with the facility earlier today. Your bill is paid in full, and a fund has been established to cover all expenses for the next 5 years. I just looked at him, unable to process his words. Your mother is taken care of. You no longer have to think about it. I cannot. Dante, that is an incredible amount of money. I cannot take it. It is already handled. He reached over the table and took my hand in his. You can repay me, if that will ease your mind. But to be honest, Natalia, the cost of 5 years of care is less than what I pay to maintain my cars. To me, it is nothing, but to you it is the whole world. So please, allow me to handle this. My eyes began to sting with tears. No one had ever done something like this for me. Marcus knew all about my mother's condition. He had sworn he would assist me after our wedding, but he never lifted a finger. He always had a reason why it was not the right moment. Dante had met me only a day ago, and he just solved my biggest problem. Why? The single word was a fractured sound. Why are you helping me like this? He got up and walked around the table, gently pulling me up from my chair. He cupped my face with his hands, his thumbs brushing away the tears I had not realized were falling. Because the instant I laid eyes on you in that ballroom, a part of me saw a part of you. I saw your hurt, your resilience, and your will to keep going when everything is hopeless. His voice became low and sincere. I have built my entire world on understanding people, Natalia, on perceiving what they conceal, what they desire, and how they will react under pressure. And when I saw you, I saw a person who is owed more than what fate had given her. That is not a real reason. No. He gave a sorrowful, knowing smile. Let me offer you this, then. I am a possessive man who desires you in ways that are likely not good for me. A man who sees you and finds something that must be guarded, must be owned, and if it comes to it, is worth setting the world on fire for. Is that a more truthful answer? My heart pounded in my chest. You do not even know me. I know what matters. He rested his forehead on mine, and I felt his warm breath on my mouth. I know you are more powerful than you believe. I know you have the taste of hope and the feeling of salvation. I know that touching you begins to mend something shattered inside me. Dante, this is completely crazy, he went on, his voice filled with urgency. I am aware I should let you put your life back together, meet a man who is suitable, a man who is not dangerous. But I am unable to, Natalia. The idea of you walking away, of you being with another man, it creates a desire to bolt every door in this place and hold you here, where I am certain you are protected and you are with me. That is insane. It is possessive, is what I should say. Then I kissed him. This time, nothing got in our way. No one knocked on the door. No duties tore us from each other. Dante groaned, deep in his chest, and made the kiss more intense, his hands exploring my shape with a growing need. He backed me up until my shoulders met the wall next to the window. The cold glass behind me was a stark contrast to the warmth of his body against mine. Order me to stop, he murmured into my neck, his teeth brushing against my skin. Say that you require distance, or time, or a clear head. I need you. I tugged his shirt from his pants, my fingers touching his skin, tracing the lines of his muscles and the scars that held tales I had not yet heard. I need to feel like I am living again. I have to erase everything but right now, and this sensation. He claimed my lips once more, consuming my words, as his fingers undid the buttons on my shirt with intense concentration. The cool room air touched my skin when he pulled the material aside, his gaze growing darker as he looked at me. Beautiful, he whispered, his touch following the line of my collarbone and the curve of my breast. So incredibly beautiful. His next kiss was slower, more complete, while his hands moved over me with a kind of worship. I once believed Marcus understood my body, but this was not the same. Dante explored me as if he were studying a new language, committing to memory every reaction, every spot that made me inhale sharply or shiver. When he at last picked me up, my legs circling his waist As he carried me to a room I guessed was his bedroom, through an adjoining door, I felt zero fear. I felt only excitement, want, and the absolute conviction that I was in the precise place I was meant to be. His bedroom was furnished with dark wood and had a simple, male aesthetic, with a huge bed in the center. He placed me on it with an unexpected tenderness. He remained at the side of the bed, his gaze roaming over me, making me feel both vulnerable and strong at the same time. This is your final opportunity, Natalia. His voice was tight with effort. His control was about to snap. Once we do this, you belong to me. There will be no retreat. No saying this was an error. Mine. That possessive word should have frightened me. Instead, a fire ignited deep inside me. It made my shaking hands reach for him, then make me yours, I breathed. Teach me what it feels like to be with someone who will never deceive me. A wave of emotion crossed his face. It was relief, victory, and raw desire. He lowered himself onto me, his weight pressing me down, and then he taught me exactly what it was to be owned by Dante Castellano. Many hours passed, and I was resting in his embrace, my form wonderfully tired and bearing the signs of his claim. There were marks on my hips and my neck, in places hidden from view. Dante's hand drew slow circles on my naked back, while his steady heartbeat thumped against my ear. So what is next? I asked, breaking the peaceful quiet. Now you will make this your home. You will reconstruct your professional life using my money and my network. The news of Marcus's admission will be released on Monday, and by Tuesday, you will be receiving job proposals. His arms held me tighter, and you will remain in my bed and in my world where I can ensure your safety. And what of Sophia? He remained silent for a considerable time. Sophia made her decisions. She has the option to keep living in this house, but with very strict rules, or she can go and fend for herself. Regardless, she is cut off from you, from any news about you, and from my unwavering help. It is time for her to understand that actions have consequences, even if she learns it later in life. What about us? I angled my head, up to see him. What does this make us? He smiled a smile that was claiming, guarding, and hinted at a dark future. I am yours, and you are mine. My fixation, my craving, my salvation, and you. He shifted his weight, rolling me onto my back, his body pinning me to the bed in a way that stole my breath. You are my fierce woman who discovered her own teeth, my lovely warrior who picked the monster instead of the safe path. Not a monster, I said, bringing his face down to mine for another kiss. My monster. That is not the same thing. Yes, he whispered on my mouth, his fingers already rediscovering my skin, stirring the passion between us again. It is. 6 months after that night, the courtroom was filled to capacity with journalists, people from my industry, and the simply curious. I was in the first row, wearing a business suit Dante had demanded he buy for me, and I observed as the judge delivered Marcus's penalty. 18 months of probation, community service, and a mark on his permanent record that would never go away. His professional standing was destroyed. His engagement to Sophia was called off once she understood he was only with her to get to her father's influence. I expected to feel triumphant. A part of me did, but the main feeling was one of finality. Dante's hand slipped into mine, and his thumb brushed over my knuckles in a gesture I now knew so well. He had been my strength through it all. He supported me during the court cases, the press coverage after my story was revealed, and the gradual work of restoring my career and self-worth. He was more than that. He was my companion, my love, and my sanctuary. Are you ready to leave? He asked quietly as people started to file out of the room. Not quite. I faced him and looked closely at his features. He was the man who had stormed into my world and upended it completely. There is something I must say to you. A hint of worry showed in his gaze. What is the matter? Nothing is the matter. I drew in a deep breath and then spoke the words. I love you. I understand that a half year seems fast. Our story began in wreckage and retribution, built from all the broken things that people say can never last. But I love you, Dante. I love the shadows you carry and the way you shield me from the world. I love how your gaze treats me like something sacred, something priceless. His entire demeanor shifted, first with shock, then with a wave of joy that made him look unguarded. I told him, Natalia, you do not have to feel the same way. But he cut me off. I love you. The declaration was absolute, spoken with a fierce conviction. My love for you began that night in the ballroom. The moment I saw the pain and the fire warring in your eyes. I loved you while witnessing your strength return, watching you seize back everything that was stolen from you. The depth of my love for you is terrifying, because no one has ever held this much power over me. He stood and drew me up into his arms, and a profound sense of rightness settled deep within my bones. This man, so lethal, so stunning, so wonderfully complex, was mine, and I was his. He pulled away suddenly, his gaze locking with mine. Marry me, he said. Not because you still need my protection. You are past that, and not for revenge or convenience or any other logical reason. Marry me because I cannot see a future that does not have you in it, because you are the only one who ever looked past my reputation and saw the man I really am. Because for every day I have left, I want to wake up knowing you belong to me. My vision blurred with tears, but they were nothing like the ones I shed 6 months before. These were tears of joy, of hope, of the stunning realization that I had found exactly where I was supposed to be. Yes, I whispered. Yes, I will marry you. His kiss was a promise of forever. When we finally parted, the courtroom was deserted, except for Vincent. He stood near the door, a faint smile on his normally stoic face. Should we let Sophia know? I asked, while we walked to the exit, my hand held securely in his. For a moment, Dante's expression tightened. She is working on herself, he said. Going to a therapist, trying to figure out how she turned into a person capable of such cruelty. Maybe someday we can have a relationship with her again, but you are my priority now. Our future is my priority. I leaned against him, taking in the scent that now felt like home to me. It was sandalwood and safety, danger and devotion. Our future sounds absolutely perfect. We stepped out into the sunlight, and reporters immediately started shouting questions that we ignored. Vincent cleared a path for us to the car that was waiting. I thought about the woman I was 6 months ago. She was broken, desperate, and completely invisible. That woman was gone now, consumed in the fire of Dante's protection and my own refusal to be defeated. In her place was someone far stronger, someone who had discovered that the most dangerous option is sometimes the only correct one. I went to that ballroom, just trying to survive, but instead, I found salvation, and it was wrapped in an expensive suit and filled with deadly promises. It wore the face of my best friend's father, but it carried the soul of a person who understood the pain of being broken and still made the choice to heal. I love you, Dante said, softly as the car door shut, closing us off from the rest of the world. I love you too, I answered, and I felt it with every scarred, healed, and changed part of my heart. The girl who was betrayed no longer existed. In her place was a woman who learned to fight back, to take what was rightfully hers, to love a devil and have him love her in return. And that, I realized as Dante's mouth found mine one more time was the most satisfying revenge of all. This story reminds us of a truth we often forget, that the people who try to break you are never as powerful as they believe. Betrayal can steal your career, your love, and your dignity. But it can never steal your strength, not unless you let it. Natalia lost everything, yet she never stopped fighting. And sometimes the universe sends help from the most unexpected places. Your darkest chapter is not your final chapter. Keep standing, keep fighting, and never let anyone convince you that you deserve less than justice. If this story moved you, if you felt Natalia's pain and cheered for her victory, then you are exactly the kind of listener we create these stories for. Hit that subscribe button so you never miss a story. Leave a comment and tell us, have you ever been betrayed by someone you trusted completely? And if you know someone who needs to hear this message today, share this video with them. Your support means the world to us, and it helps us bring more stories like this one to life. This content was carefully researched, crafted, and manually edited by our team to deliver meaningful stories and valuable life lessons to our audience.